In this video, we are breaking down Disney's unfavorable problem. We are going to break it down, analyze it, see what's going on with this, because this has been the talk of the community lately, and it deserves a little deeper dive. We're going to talk about it up next. Welcome to OG55, and I brought my producer, my collaborator, the man who holds many titles, host of the Freshly Squeezed show here on OG55, Dr. Dre, Producer Dre, Vash Guy. Welcome back, brother. How are you doing today, sir?
Going pretty good. You know, it's been an interesting couple of days, as you know. Quarterly earnings report, we just got off of that, and a lot of people are talking about very many things about it. And we will definitely break that down in a little bit more detail. But if you guys want to talk to me directly, you can go ahead and do so right down there at Vashguy for, as Christine Waistlines McCarthy would say, for all the robust discussion. Go ahead and do so right down there. And if you want to see me, well, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now at Orange Grove 55 at Freshly Squeezed. Your source for juicy news and info squeezed fresh right from the Grove. See? Right there. See, I already messed up a little bit, but that chime right there, as you know, that's for accessing Disneyland. And I think this whole thing is going to be on access. And the, what did Disney call it? The favorable mix that they're looking to have in the parks going into the future.
Yeah, no, 100%. So let's dive right into the topic at hand today. So from what I understand, we have a clip from our friends over at Fresh Baked.
Yes.
Dave did a video, I think it was, he dropped it yesterday in regard to this whole unfavorable Magic Key situation. Should we go ahead and play that video and kind of jumpstart it from there?
A little bit. And I want to go ahead and do in the middle here because he brushes off with this a little bit. And I want to go ahead and give a sense to our viewers as to why this might be the case. He's attempting to delineate between, you know, what actually this unfavorable mixed comment actually was referring to. And I do believe his first assessment in here is correct. And I want to go ahead and just key off of what he said right here. So you can go ahead and, if you want to, share my screen. And we can go ahead and do that right now, real quickly.
Now, hear me out. If the comment about the unfavorable attendance mix is in fact about the balance between Magic Keys in general and the single-day tickets, that's very bad. That's very bad for the future of annual passes. Maybe not forever, but at least for right now. And again, all evidence that we're seeing is pointing in that direction, actually.
Exactly. And I mean, look, for the future of the Magic Keys, that is, you know, worrisome, let's just say that, because I do believe all the evidence is pointing in that direction, like he said right there. But he didn't maybe necessarily go into why that might be the case. Now, Scott Gustin and some others, they were quick to point out that, yes, this is probably what they are talking about, the relationship between the annual pass holder population, or the Magic Key population, and the general ticket holders. But nobody's really broken down exactly why that mix, if slanted in one direction over another, might be, as Disney puts it, unfavorable. And listen, I mean, as we know, Disneyland is a kind of a locals haven, if you will, right? A locals-oriented park. 75% of its annual attendance comes from people within 250 miles. And that has its own kind of spending and consumer habits, as opposed to maybe a place like Walt Disney World. And Disneyland, for the longest time, I mean, for years now, has been looking to reevaluate and reassess or try to, let's say, get a more favorable mix in the direction of domestic and international tourist visitation. But they have been stymied for quite a bit now. Well, as Josh Diamaro would say, or as I'm calling now, Josh Unfavorable Diamaro, has referred to the kind of the pandy situation. He saw that as an opportunity to go ahead and reassess the business, reconfigure the business for not just survivability at the time, but for growth going forward. And he's done that in particular ways. OG, is that a correct assessment on all those things?
No, absolutely, absolutely. And here's the thing too, is that Disney's hand was really forced into this unfavorable mix. I know in this video, Dave talks about how, maybe Disney has control over the mix, and so maybe it isn't 100%, that looking that bad for Magic Keys. Maybe this is something in regards to the different tiers that he's referring to. Well, Disney did have control over the mix. If you guys remember, they were very much limiting the Magic Key holders early on in this whole process. And that's why a lot of people, the Magic Keys and what have you, and even the lawsuit that is pending right now, kind of forced Disney's hand, right? It made Disney, basically go from, okay, we're gonna have this mix that we want on the table here, and then the Magic Key holders kind of came in and said, no, this isn't fair, we can't make reservations. Then there's a lawsuit. Well, now Disney was forced into adding more Magic Keys and opening those buckets. So Disney hasn't been in control this whole time. They were forced into allowing more Magic Keys into the system, opening up those buckets, and now you're having a situation where Disney's not making that much money, or the numbers aren't looking that great for Disneyland because they overextended how many Magic Keys can come into the park. Disney knew from the get-go that the Magic Keys don't bring in a lot of money. That's why you Magic Key holders were having an issue getting reservations early on. It wasn't until all the complaints occurred that Disney had to reverse course, and now Disney's paying for it financially.
Yes, Disney has. I mean, they absolutely are paying for it financially. Let's be honest here. I mean, they're losing money on the table, and we'll go into how much money that actually they might be losing as a result of this. But look, listen, I mean, when they instituted the Magic Key system, based off of, like I said earlier, off of Josh Unfavorable Diamaro's goal with the Magic Key program and the reservation system in general, oh, hey, we have this new reservation system, the shiny new reservation system, and that not only allows us to control how many people actually get into the parks, but how many of a particular demographic gets into the parks, being the annual pass holders themselves. So they debuted this Magic Key system with that system built in place, harkening back off of what the annual pass holder system had turned into for Walt Disney World, and they were like, okay, now we're going to implement it here. And the intention was we can control all the access for these groups on the back end, right? We can sell as many of them as we want, and we'll just control them via the bucket system and the ratios and all that kind of stuff. Well, remember, that was right before the busy holiday season. And the holiday season, it was, they wanted to go ahead and reassess or reconfigure the balance or relationship between domestic tourists and or ticket holders and annual pass holders. And so they set those thresholds very low for annual pass holders. And, unfortunately for them, they were very displeased with the result, and I mean, rightfully so. This is why, one of the reasons why, as soon as the system was announced, I told people, I'm going to hold off a little bit. Let's just see how this shakes out. And sure enough, people felt so slighted by what they had actually bought into that one of those people sued. And now, and combined with all those things, like you said, OG, that forced their hand into reassessing how they were going to treat the Magic Keys going forward. And so everybody was, they were living high off the hog. Those ratios had skewed into their favor, and everybody was happy and thrilled and all that kind of stuff. But then, as is pointed out in the quarterly earnings report, it didn't work out so well for Disney, right?
Right.
They gave the Magic Keys, the access that they wanted.
They gave the key holders basically keys to the kingdom.
Yes, he's the kingdom, and that's exactly what they want. And unfortunately, it didn't actually turn out so well for them. So now, on the eve of the opportunity to allow people to, or these Magic Key holders to renew, this is why they haven't yet so far. because they can't repeat the mistakes of the past. They can't repeat the mistakes of August 25th, 2021 into the future, right? I mean, we'll just get the same results again. And they can't necessarily change the terms and conditions of the past, because that might actually open them up to legal exposure. So what is left to do here?
From what I understand, it's only like the top key, though, right? In terms of legal exposure, right?
Yes.
Just to clarify for the audience.
Yes. Okay. It is absolutely surrounding that top tier. Now, I think there are implications for the lower tiers, just by their relation to it, but I would agree with you. It's mostly to that top tier, and that's why we brought up on the Quarterly Earnings Report show. Definitely check that out if you haven't yet. After the show, of course. That they most likely will be reassessing. The annual pass system going forward, the Magic Kingdom system going forward, by perhaps only allowing people to renew into the lower tiers. That way, it's a much more seasonal product than what it is currently today. As you know, I mean, and Christine Wastelands McCarthy, she actually mentions this. She mentions, hey, yeah, other than the top tier where basically anybody can go, the lower tiers, they have a lot of blackout dates and so forth, and those are levers that they can pull if in fact they need to, if demand were to abate from the either domestic or international tourist population.
Well, and you made a great point to me on the phone, and I want to give you credit for this. The visitation habits of key holders,
yes,
almost guarantees, and I'll let you elaborate on this. I kind of want to set the table. But you were saying how the visitation habits of key holders almost guarantees lesser spending. In terms of like when they visit, right, and what have you. If you can kind of elaborate on what you told me earlier to our audience, because I think you made a fantastic point earlier with that.
Right.
Absolutely fantastic.
I had come to a realization. This is why I wanted to do the entire show, right? Because it's like, but a lot of people will make the case. Magic Keys do spend money. What are you talking about? And it's like, maybe not. And we can break it down really, really simple. Let's say, okay, let's say you're visiting the parks on an annualized basis, right? You're annualizing your actual visitation patterns by way of getting an annual rate per year rather than per day, right? So honestly, if you go and you broke it down really nicely, right? If you go over, what is it, 7 to 8 times, the pass is basically paid for itself, and every single time past that point is money. Now we have confirmed people on YouTube actually who have gone into the parks last 5 minutes of the day, in some cases, right
before closing.
Right before closing. Now, let's think about this for a second, guys. I'm not saying that all pass holders do this, but let's take this extreme example. Well, there's no restaurants open at that time. You're not going to Savvy's workshop and building a lightsaber at that time. There's nothing there. There's not even much capacity to spend as much as maybe a day guest is, and the reason why is because a day guest is they're paying by the day. Every single hour is precious. Again, let's say you spend $200 on a pass, right? Well, break that up over 14 hours, assuming the park is open from 8 to close. Well, every single hour costs $15 an hour just to be in the park. And for every single hour that you're not in the park, you're paying for that as well. So you're leaving money on the table if you don't spend the full 14 hours in the park. And if you do that, well, you're going to have to probably, go to either, maybe 2, maybe even 3 restaurants, right? In order to eat and be satiated and actually make it through your day. Well, think about it. A lot of pass holders, I would say, a lot of pass holders come in after work, maybe spend a few hours, and they go home. And if you're only spending 3 or 4 hours, to cite, or what is it, bring up our buddy George here, who loves his Carl's Jr., maybe you're hitting Carl's Jr. before and after, and you're not maybe spending anything while you're there. Right. Whereas a ticket holder who is trying to get the most value out of their money is going to be spending money in order to make it through the day. So not only does your level of access you know, on an annualized basis, affect how, you know, how much you spend over a year, but it also, you know, it also affects your daily consumer and your habits, your consumer spending habits while you're in the park as well, not just outside of it. A very fascinating thing that I had not previously thought of, but it's so obvious and makes so much sense.
It's so obvious. If you're only there for 3 or 4 hours, you're obviously not going to have 3 meals at the park.
Right.
Like a person who's paying for that day ticket. If you're paying for a ticket, this is your one visit for the year. You pay for that ticket. You're getting there when it opens. You're leaving when it closes. You're having 3 or maybe even 4 meals during the day, maybe snacks. You're buying merch. You don't know when the next time you'll come back. That mindset is a lot different than the pass holder, like you talked about, that comes in 20 minutes before the park closes. I mean, you're not spending anything at 20 minutes before the park closes. I don't even know. A lot of this stuff isn't even open. Like you said, a lot of the food places are closing. They open late. They close early. You know, I think Main Street's open. That's about it. I mean, you could maybe buy something on Main Street, but for the most part, there's not a whole lot of options when you're there for that amount of time at the very end. But a person who buys that day ticket or is on vacation and spending 2 or 3 days there at the hotel, they're living on property, basically, whether it be for a day or whether it be for 2 or 3 days. They're forced into spending money every time they want to eat. The pass holders, the key holders, are not forced into that. And I'm guilty of it too. Look, I am guilty of it too. I will go. There's a place right down the street on Ball Road. They sell great banh mi. For those of you that are aware, banh mi is like this Vietnamese sandwich. They're phenomenal. Love them. But we'll stop by before Disneyland and pick up a banh mi, you know, and that's our food. We'll get to the park, have some fun, ride some rides, and when we leave, we'll grab some food on the way home. But that doesn't help Disney at all. And Disney's looking at the numbers from me and other key holders going, wait a minute, you know, this person is going to the park and they're spending like $23. Like, this is not worth our time. And you better believe a guy like Bob Chapek, who's data driven, all about the numbers, they're looking at that stuff. They're absolutely looking at that stuff. The key holders and, well, formerly annual pass holders were really getting a free ride for a long time. They had unlimited access. They were popping in and out when they wanted, and Disney wasn't making a whole lot of money on them. I know a lot of people will tell you that Disney was making hand over fist with these annual pass holders. They were not. They are not. Chapek proved it. He admitted to everybody, to the world, we are not making money on this contingent. We are not making money on it.
Well, and the issue is just to put it one step further. Now, you know, I'm well with you, OG. I mean, you know, I like to, you know, eat off-site occasionally as well, even though I'm a ticket holder. I got there's a place called Crazy Nacho Fries right there at Lamson Harbor. Good stuff. Nice. Highly recommend. But, you know, the issues that you point out, OG, are compounded by the fact of the reservation system itself. Remember, if you have an annual pass holder or a couple of annual pass holders coming 5 minutes before closing time, you've now prevented 2 ticket holders who could have taken up that slot and been there for the entire day. In fact, I actually had this issue where you know, I was a ticket holder. I was, you know, I had a $200 ticket in my hand. So actually 3 of them. I was trying to get my whole family in. I was trying to get them into a day where we could actually meet our buddy George and his friend Minnie at the parks. And you know, I was going to spend the entire day with them. And unfortunately, I couldn't actually use those tickets because I couldn't get a reservation. And you know, there had to have been some annual pass holders on that day who, I don't know. I mean, maybe they forego their you know, visit entirely. Maybe they took the penalty, or maybe they showed up for a couple of hours, or maybe they showed up for the last minute, you know, 5 minutes or something. But you know, my family couldn't go. They had no opportunity. You know, because of that. Well, what is detailed here in the quarterly earnings report? This kind of unfavorable mix that they have.
Right.
And look, it's an issue, right? And just to put this kind of into perspective, you know, let's kind of bear this out here. Let's kind of you know, think about this in a different way. Let's say now, let's say, you know, we had 1 million annual pass holders, right? Before, you know, 2019 in you know, before that time, but about 1 million it had maxed out at. Okay, let's say that every single one of those pass holders spend just $2,000 a year. Every single one. You know, it's passes, merch, food, everything. $2,000 on average.
And that's extremely generous because most people don't buy into the highest pass, you know?
Extremely generous. Extremely. But let's say they do. Well, in a year, you're talking $2 billion. It's a lot. And to, Fresh Bake's credit, he actually did say they were worth billions. And I do agree. Billions. But it's a capacity-limited business. Let's replace all of those annual pass holders with ticket holders. Let's say you got, for example, maybe you got 50,000 ticket holders per day into Disneyland, and you just saturated with ticket holders and you didn't have any annual passes whatsoever. And let's say every single one of those spends maybe $300 a day, right? For example, and that's not I think that's pretty reasonable, right? It costs a little over $100 a day to go in there, and sometimes maybe it costs a little bit less, $300 average, pretty good. Well, that's $5.4 billion. So you could see right there where it's like just those rough estimates, and again, we're being generous on all kind of all sides. That's kind of where it's at right there. Now, another way to think about this is let's see. Look, you brought it up yourself, right? You're making bank after 7-8 times going with a pass, right? Well, if you go regularly enough, you can get yourself down to maybe, you're spending maybe $20 a visit. Whereas, just like the example I used before with a $200 pass, that person's spending $15 an hour just to be in the park. That's how much it's costing them. And, I mean, beyond that, everything is gravy on the back end because they're spending, money from food and merch and so forth. Whereas annual pass holders, they're paying maybe $20 a day just, to be there themselves, and they might not get anything. That's the difference, guys. That's the different ratios that we're going off right there.
And that does Disney no good. You like Dre said, you go 6 or 7 times, you already paid for your pass. Every visit after that, Disney's basically losing money on you because you're not pass holders just don't spend a lot of money. And we can lie to ourselves and say that we all do. And I bought this $200 whatever the other day though. Okay, there's exceptions to everything, but for the most part, pass holders go in, they buy maybe a meal, maybe a Dole Whip, a popcorn bucket, and they're out. Okay, there's not a whole lot of money being spent by any of us, myself included.
Right.
And you only have to go a few times to pay for that pass, and Disney loses money on you every subsequent visit after that, pretty much. So
and the reason why they do is because that slot could have been used by a ticket holder.
Exactly. It could have been used by someone who was going there from open to close and eating 3 meals, buying merch, buying snacks, because this is their one visit in a lifetime, or one visit a year, or one visit every few years, right?
Yes.
And one thing that I do have to say too, and this really kind of boggles my mind with the whole renewal situation going on right now. I'm seeing a lot of people stressed and pressed over, oh man, when were they going to announce renewals? I want to renew. I want to renew. Everyone is so stressed out over this. But at the same time, all I've heard for like the past year is how Bald Man Bad ruined the magic, how reservations completely destroyed the experience, how Genie Plus ruined everything. For a place that's just crap now, according to fans, everything's ruined because of JPEG and reservations and Genie Plus. Why is everyone so stressed about renewing their pass to a place they supposedly find no value in anymore? I don't understand that. Can some key holders explain that to me, please? If you're not happy there anymore, why are you so stressed about the renewal? Go to Universal, go somewhere else. But why is it such a big deal at this point if JPEG ruined it?
Well, I think the realization.
It's a fair question.
I think it's like an abusive relationship, right? They want to get back in, but I think the realization is coming to bear here that you might have to pay per day, just like everybody else who has to pay per day, and that's kind of the heart of the issue here. What's interesting? Let's see where do we want to take this? Okay. Wait, hang on. I gotta think about this because I got lots to say. Okay,
I've been there.
I know. Sorry, guys. I do apologize. But look, I think a lot of this stuff changed here when actually, ironically, Oogie Boogie Bash. When Oogie Boogie Bash tickets sold out as quickly as they did, I don't even think Walt Disney World's has sold out. Their equivalent Halloween party that they have over there, I don't even think it's sold out yet. But it sold out almost immediately. And that made it clear to everybody, wow, okay, maybe there's a lot more demand for the whole, this kind of holiday season than we maybe previously anticipated. And maybe we might just get away with selling individual tickets and maybe not having to sell annual passes in order to have this backfill or whatever that they have in mind. You see, the issue is, here's the issue, okay? They have no way right now in delineating between even pass holders post-purchase. Right. Remember back in the day that, we were talking about this and reporting on this, and even ShapeX said as much during a quarterly earnings call back last year, that before they actually announced the Magic Key system itself, they were saying that the annual pass holder system was going to turn into a loyalty program, right? Okay, that loyalty program would have delineated between the pass holders themselves. It would have prioritized bigger spenders from smaller spenders and so forth. That way, maybe higher spenders get maybe a disproportionate level of access compared to lower ones. Maybe that frees up during the spring months. Maybe that gets maybe tighter during the peak months and so forth. Well, they didn't actually end up doing that. So for them, the only way they were going to, restrict at all was going to be on an access level. Well, clearly they can't do that either because of the problems that that occurred in the fall of 2021. So right now, there really isn't any way to delineate between the pass holders at all. So now they kind of think of them as kind of one block, essentially, that has to be managed. And that's kind of unfortunate because I think a lot of these problems stem from that. Yeah. If, in fact, they were able to delineate between the pass holders, maybe they would prioritize a little bit more access, at least to them. And the only way they can do that, I think, is getting rid of the payment system. The payment plan, I think, would, if it were to be removed, would mitigate a lot of these issues. OG, what do you think?
No, I agree with you. And like I said earlier, we talked earlier on the phone about this, and you brought up, again, a fantastic point, where the payment plan program was sort of birthed through this idea that, in 2008-ish, we were going through a major recession, and so Disney was sort of like protecting themselves, right? Basically, to get people into their parks. Okay, we'll offer you monthly payments to kind of pad that impact from that recession. But they never got off of that, though. The recession came and gone, and they're still on the payment plan system. And that's why you're seeing, even though Disney raises prices $100 a year or sometimes even more for these passes, people are still buying into it, because when you spread out even $1,400 over the span of 12 months, it's not that expensive. It's like maybe $100 or so a month. Most people can afford that. It's pretty doable, but you force people into buying that $1,400 pass up front, and a lot of people are going to fall off. And again, I know it sounds really gross, but look, Disney has to balance this. You can't, and I know a lot of people, they push on me with this when I say that you have to sort of mitigate it, because they want to be like, no, Disney's magical. Everyone and their mom should be able to go to a Disney park if they want to. And I agree with you. I wish we lived in a perfect world and that could be the case. Unfortunately, there is a finite amount of space in these parks, and that's just the way it is. And you either have an uncomfortable situation where you're wall to wall, crowded beyond belief, and you can't get on anything because it's too crowded,
right?
Or you have to price people out. It's the unfortunate reality of the situation. There is no other way around it. Well, actually, there is a reservation system, but fans don't want that either. So it's like, you have to mitigate to some degree. You just have to.
You do. Look, the annual visitation of Walt Disney World, actually Magic Kingdom in Walt Disney World, was what, like 18 million people last year?
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody's seen, but there's 300 million people in this country alone. Not everybody can show up. It's an extremely supply constrained business, and who can you have in that actual park? Like you said, OG, the payment payment plan system was enacted during a time when domestic and international tourism was falling off because, like you said, of the housing crisis, of the recession that we had during that time. And there was a big worry that the parks would be empty as a result. So just like in this earnings call with Christine Wastelands McCarthy, when she said, "Hey, look, listen, there's there's levers, and if demand actually drops off, we can lead into our annual pass holders more." Right? They said, all of those. She said, let's see. She said, let me just see here. We had limited the number of annual passes that we have across some of our businesses, some of the parks. And all of those come with with the exception of the highest tiered annual passes, they all come with some blackout dates. So to the extent to which perhaps you had highlighted demand, you could loosen up some of those to bring more people into the parks and just enjoy the park and spend money while they're there, right? What she's saying there is, hey, if demand abates at all, we can go ahead and turn on that lever. We can turn on that spigot. Well, we're not there yet. Maybe we're there in some demographics, but not all. The demand, I mean, she even said, we're keeping people out as it is. Right. So what does that mean? Well, you got to keep annual pass holders out to a certain extent in order to rebalance this equation into a more favorable mix. That's what they're talking about with higher spenders. Because right now there is no way to delineate between the pass holders. They could mitigate a lot of that. It would be better for everybody. It would be better for pass holders, and it would be better for people who are actually in the parks if they were able to get rid of the payment plan system. Again, it was enacted at a time when demand was falling off. We're not in 2008 anymore. It's 14 years, and they're still enacting the same policies in order to generate demand. You don't have a problem with that. The problem is supply.
Yes. No, 100%. This isn't Disney Plus, where you can have really the unlimited amount of people signing up for it.
Yes, he said that. Chapek has said that.
And Chapek said as much. Exactly. This is a physical place. There's only so much physical room to fit people. So Disney's going to want to maximize the profitability from each person walking in those gates. Absolutely. And a person who walks in and an hour before park closing and doesn't spend anything.
Right.
Just reality is in Disney's from Disney's perspective, from that business perspective, they're not as valuable as that person maybe coming from out of town that's going for the whole day or maybe even multiple days. And it makes me mad. Before I go, and Dre, you'll continue the party when I leave. Like yesterday, you did a phenomenal job yesterday, brother. Phenomenal job. But it makes me mad because I know you're not a Californian. You and your family come here out of state, right? And it's a treat for you guys. Like it's a vacation for you guys. And it makes me mad that people like you and your family are like you mentioned, you had an issue with the reservation system. You couldn't get in. You had tickets, but you couldn't get in. That upsets me because someone from the keyholder program was squatting on reservations for what? Who knows? Maybe because they wanted to go for an hour and get a pin and leave. I'm sorry. It makes me sick to my stomach. I care about these places. I love Disneyland. I want everyone to have a chance to go to these places. And part of that is acknowledging that the squatting and the keyholder program is a problem. And it's easy for keyholders to be like, no, we're not a problem. Just let us in whenever we want. It's easy to do that because it's me. But the thing is, it is a problem, guys. It is a problem. I'm a keyholder too. I have the same issue. Like I go for a few hours, I leave. It's horrible. But this is the reality. We have to acknowledge it's a problem and fix it. We have to acknowledge it. We can't just put our head in the sand and go, oh, no problem. Just let us in. Yeah, unlimited access, no problem. No. It doesn't work like that. We have to also be cognizant of people like Dre and tourists who want to get a chance to get into these amazing places as well. It's not all about us.
Well, look, I do appreciate that, and yes, I am a ticket holder. I'm not an annual pass holder myself, so but I am sympathetic to annual pass holders because I'm a ticket holder, but I don't necessarily am the biggest spender. And I'm sure if Disney could delineate between the ticket holders themselves in terms of annual income, I don't know if I make the list, admittedly. Which these things happen, right? These are realities that we have to face within ourselves and within whatever demographics that and unfortunately Disney's going to place us in. But look, listen, I mean it's an interesting thing, right? You talk about squatting, and I do agree with you. The squatting problem is an issue. And it was actually Mindy, it was actually George's friend while we were there, who who our buddy George has done work with her before. But Mindy was actually saying something interesting. It's like, well, wait a minute, why shouldn't you be able to apply maybe the dining reservation mentality to reservations themselves? Maybe you have to put down money in order to make a reservation and so forth. It's an interesting idea because it would delineate between maybe the people who would actually, spend money and maybe the people who actually who wouldn't. Right, you a little skin in the game, so to speak. But listen, it's an interesting equation because squatting, right? Squatting, you either have time or you either have money. Right? And so the people who have maybe not a lot of money, but maybe have a little bit more time on their hands would conceivably be able to manipulate the reservation system and be able to play the game a little bit, as it were, maybe better than people who had more money than time. Right. So you have this almost kind of perverse system that we have here, because the people who are disproportionately going to give maybe a greater level of access are the people who have less money than the people who might want to go, but they just don't have the time to deal with the reservation system as it exists currently. Right. That's kind of one of the effects that you have when, let's say, the annual pass holder system is as accessible as it is. And that's why you have to rein in at least these payment plans. I mean, they just provide a little bit more access than maybe they honestly should. Because if you're just, let's be honest, if you're just barely able to make it through maybe an annual a monthly payment system, right, you likely don't have disposable income when you actually get into the parks themselves. And I think 100%. Disney's looking at that and evaluating that.
100%. Dre, I will let you continue to party. Thank you so much, brother. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Continue to watch. Vash Guy's going to continue the party, talk about some magic keys and break it down. And thank you all so much. And thank you, Dre. I'll talk to you guys later.
Thank you. I do appreciate it, OG. Well, look, don't worry, I won't keep you guys for long. I know you've heard me blabber and rant and all this kind of stuff. I do apologize, but I wanted to go ahead and bring some, other issues to you. On the issue of the payment plan system itself, right? We've had this since 2008. It has, really, I mean, from all reports on this issue, it really has ballooned the annual pass holder population into waves previously unthinkable. And that's actually led to a lot of price inflation when it comes to the passes themselves. That's one of the problems of the pass holder system. That's why the payment plan system. That's why I say for, annual pass holders or Magic Keys themselves, if you get rid of the payment plan system, it might actually be better for everybody, including the people as part on that annual pass holder system or Magic Key system, because then you might see less of the inflation on the passes themselves that we've been seeing. Because, well, if you annualize it out, right, if you break it up over 12 months. Well, you have to, when you increase prices, have to really make it sting, as it were, because you're doing that. Whereas if it's just one large lump sum, well, maybe that's a different equation, a different story, as it were. There's another thing, too, that's very, very interesting. Right now, as it currently stands, well, there really isn't any even interest on the payment plan system. So who's to stop anybody, even the whale annual passes as they were, from embarking on that payment system? There really isn't any incentive to do so otherwise, if you live in the Southern California market anyway. Well, just to give you an idea of how big that interest could be, I think the average credit card, monthly credit card payment in interest is about 19%. Oof, 19% is quite a bit. Just think about if you were to apply that to the annual passes themselves. Let's take, for example, if you were to have every single annual pass holder actually go through with the monthly payment system, right? And let's say you were going to do it at a rate of 19% per month. And now let's say you had 1 million annual pass holders actually that were on this system, Magic Key or otherwise, right? Well, just in interest alone, let's see. Just in interest alone, let me see if I got my math correct. Yeah. On you know, a $1,500 pass, let's say every single person had a dream key, for example, right? You're talking about $281 million. That's a huge amount just in interest alone. It is remarkable, and yet Disney is not actually doing that. There is no delineation whatsoever between the annual pass holders at all. And so I think that's really where the problem kind of lies. I think there are very valuable annual pass holders who they want to be in their parks. But right now, a slot is a slot is a slot is a slot. An AP or an MK is an MK is an MK is an MK. I think that right there, and honestly, Chapek actually talked about this during, I believe we played a portion of it in yesterday's program. Chapek actually talked about how in a subsequent to the following the quarterly earnings report, a CNBC interview, if I'm not mistaken, he talked about how they're taking a much more surgical approach with pricing. And I believe that's to be the case. And I believe they're going to make a more surgical or have a much more surgical approach when it comes to the annual passes as well. So it's a fascinating it's a fascinating discussion. There's a lot of different ways that Disney can go to solve their what they call their unfavorable problem, right? But unfortunately, a lot of those methods, it's not going to make everybody happy. And at this point, I don't think, honestly, that's the intent. I think it's to make the highest spenders the happiest of them all. And honestly, even at the ticket holder level, I don't know if that includes me or not. We're going to have to see. But for the annual passes themselves and for the mix itself, I think the way you got to do that has to be with the monthly payment system. I mean, it's just by design, right? It was enacted at a time when demand from the domestic and international market was falling off. So if demand hasn't abated, in fact, it's only exploded from then on, year after year after year after year, why are you encouraging more demand? It really should be tapering off, and I think the way you do that is to get rid of the payment system. But until they do, we'll see. So what happens now? What's the most likely course of action? Well, unfortunately, they can't exactly change the terms and conditions with their pass, but especially the Dream Key, as it were, because that might open them up to legal exposure. Suppose you could increase the price, and we've heard as much as 20% increase in terms of pricing when it comes to the passes. But if you have that monthly payment structure, well, $300 over 12 months. I mean, we can go ahead and do some quick math on that now. Let's see here. 300 divided by 12 only ends up to be about $25 a month. Is that necessarily going to get people to maybe not renew their passes? I don't think so. And I think they sold way too many Dream Keys. Because honestly, this was all, hey, we can control the access on the back end. Well, the fall season of 2021 proved otherwise. So now they have to reassess access, and I think the only way to do that without some sweeping change is to affect the sales of the Dream Key, and it looks like that might not be the case. I think, and there's a couple other ways they can go, but cut to the point, make it really simple here. I think the way they're going to go ahead and do this, if they in fact make any passes available before August 25th, well, it's probably going to be in the form of the lower tiers, because as Christine Wastelands McCarthy actually brought out, she says that the lower tiers, well, they have many blackout dates attached. And I think that's what it's going to be. I think they want a more seasonal visitation pattern established for their annual passes or magic keys, no matter what tier you actually have. And the easiest way to do that is to make the lower tiers available, and I think maybe that might be the reality. Otherwise, they might wait until January 1st, and maybe we'll see maybe all the passes actually made available during that time period as we get into the slower months, as it historically has been. But maybe that higher tier, the Dream Key, might come with a terms and conditions that is slightly altered in order to make it well known that this pass does not guarantee you access whatsoever. The amount of access that you get from it is what you get out of it. Hopefully, if they do any of these things, it comes with a lop of that monthly payment program. A monthly payment program that was designed, like I said, to encourage demand. You know, it's fascinating. The annual pass system has its origins actually 40 years ago, when Epcot was coming out of the ground. It was going to open on October 1st, 1982, and there were some executives within the company who were unsure whether or not that all the restaurants and so forth that they were putting into this project. Remember, every single pavilion had its own restaurant and so forth. That they were unsure whether or not those were going to be filled on a consistent basis. So they dreamt up an annual pass system or a season pass system for locals in the Florida market to come in, especially when visitation slowed at various points of the year. Well, now it has ballooned into this outrageous monster that is... I mean, let's face it. It's in 2019 it had surged to over 1 million people, 1 million annual passes, and unfortunately, that has come with a lot of people who maybe feel entitled to a pass or entitled to the parks themselves. It was interesting. I was actually relaying to Disney Family Man 23, right? Before we recorded this, I was relaying to him that there used to be, and I don't know if anybody remembers this, but there used to be these kind of these pseudo motorcycle clubs at the parks. This was, I think, like 5-6 years ago. But you had people who had these kind of motorcycle and style patches on their backs, and they had these little clubs and cliques strewn throughout the park. And actually, some of these clubs claimed certain territories for their own, and to separate themselves from other clubs within the group. They got so territorial that they started fights and all kinds of stuff. It was a bad look for the park, and I think Disney may have addressed this privately between those various clubs. But that's the level of entitlement that some pass holders have had over the years. And it's really unfortunate because not all annual pass holders are that way. But the term pass hole was a thing for a reason. And it is very unfortunate. And I think going forward, I think Disney will reevaluate this mix, or this favorable or unfavorable mix, going forward. But here's the really kind of interesting thing, and one of the things I wanted to leave you off on. Disney has catered to the annual pass holder market for so long that, unfortunately, Disneyland in particular is a little bit underbuilt. And the reason why I'll say this is because, just like we were saying before, your level of access and the price attached to that will affect your consumer or visitation or consumer habits. For example, you will have annual pass holders who will, like we said before, will go maybe for a couple of hours and maybe they don't eat on property. What happens when you reassess this mix, maybe heavily in favor of international and domestic tourists, and you still have this park that is catered to the local market for over the last almost 70 years? Well, now I think you can start to see the issue. And a lot of people have pointed it out, including, Ranking the Mouse and some other people that we've had on the show. Disney, at this point, with all of Disneyland, at this point, with all of its ride shows and attractions, I believe it has over 45 attractions, if I'm not mistaken. It only has 4 sit-down restaurants. The entire park. That's insane. Now, Again, not so much of an issue if you have large, portions of your demographic maybe not eating at the park on a consistent basis. But what happens when you do? And that might be why, Walt Disney World is saturated with restaurants as opposed to Disneyland, because they simply haven't had the demand necessary in order to have so many restaurants and so forth. But what happens when you shift the demographics towards the ticket holder direction? Like I said, you can start to see the problem, right? And I think a lot of that stems from like mobile order, for example. I think the ratios on that are far too inefficient. I believe they're going with maybe a 75% mobile order to standby window. Sometimes it's 50%, but a lot of times it's 75%. And that has led to an astounding amount of inefficiency at the parks, which they have to address if they want to move towards a ticket holder or a domestic and international type visitation demographic or mix for the parks. So this is a story that's still, I think, playing out here, and that might be why they're looking to expand how many restaurants and shops they have within the form of Downtown Disney. It's going to be fascinating to see, I think with this kind of, let's say, push to reconfigure the annual attendance mix for Disneyland, I think will have its own benefits and consequences. And it's really going to be interesting to see that. So I'd like to hear from you guys, though. Am I off base? Am I right? Am I wrong? Maybe my math was, maybe it wasn't the best, right? And hey, if I got it completely wrong, you can go ahead and include it in the comments below. But I think it's a very interesting discussion, a very fascinating conversation. And yeah, I'd love to hear from you. So go ahead and put it in the comments below. Hey, please, if you could, go ahead and give us a subscribe. I can tell you this much. You definitely want to stay subscribed. I think we have a lot of content incoming. It's fascinating. If you guys want to follow me, well, I'm actually going to be making an appearance on Theme Park Wizard very, very soon here, going over Six Flags numbers. And look, the reason I bring this up, I do apologize, OG. I don't mean to use this as a platform to promote myself on in this way normally, but I'll bring this up right here because I thought it was fascinating as well. Six Flags, as it compares to Disney had a great quarter. Six Flags, not so much. And they actually had a huge attendance drop-off as well, which gives more credence to the idea that maybe domestic tourists might be dropping off to these respective parks. Very, very interesting, but that's a topic and for discussion that I'll have with Theme Park Wizard coming up, which yeah, you guys should definitely check out. But also check out our previous videos as well. I think you'll get a kick out of those if you like this content today. So go ahead, hit the subscribe button right there. Hit a like if you like the video. Just like if you don't like the video, hopefully it's not the case. But hey, we'll go ahead and take it. And yeah, if you want to go ahead and follow me, you can go ahead and do so at VashSky. Right down there, just as it were. You can go ahead and type that in. As Christine Waysigns McCarthy would say, for all the
robust
discussion, you can go ahead and do so right there. And if you want to see me, well, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now at Orange Grove 55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info squeezed fresh right from the Grove.
But really nothing compares with a freshly squeezed.
Oh, and I do have to agree with the woo right there. Nothing compares to a freshly squeezed. So go ahead and look out for videos of mine. Anyway, I really do appreciate you guys taking the time with me here. Do appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Comment down below, hit the subscribe, like button, and we'll see you all later.